Welcome to the Ericzone podcast. Today I have Matt Gardner in studio. Matt is a user experience product designer. He's also an artist and a thinker. Before we start the show, I just want to thank people that are watching the podcast. The show starts off on baladoquebec.ca. Have a look at Balado Quebec for more web shows, podcasts. Then it goes on to YouTube. Or if you're in your car, you can listen to the podcast. You can download it and listen to it on Apple Podcasts. You can have a look at our Facebook, the podcast. Thank you for sharing. Content creators, they need your support. Thank you very much for watching. Hey, Matt, how's it going?
Good. You know, some of the things that I do like a lot of coaching at work in terms of like trying to do research. So the user research. So it'd be more user research product designer. And so that's kind of looking into that stuff. But yeah, artist, thinker, just human. Earthling.
Earthling. Homo sapiens.
Yeah.
All right.
That's my identity. I've decided to go with earthling and just all as my pronouns. You know, my cats are earthlings. The trees are earthlings. We're all just kind of earthlings. If we can be in balance with each other, we're all good.
Yeah. We're going to start off the show by promoting some amazing Quebec beverages.
That's in 3D.
Wait, just turn it a little bit. Louis Cyr. Yes. Cider.
Yeah.
Who makes that? Sorry.
I don't have my glasses on.
Oh, okay, let me have a look. Yeah. Louis Cyr, Cidre Boucher, Qui Sème Récolte. They're in Saint-Jean-Mata.
Oh.
QuiSèmeRécolte.com. I'm going to put it in post-production, but here's the bottle.
That's pretty cool.
He's impressive, this guy. It's crazy what he did.
It's a nice label,
Is it true what he did, like the lifting stuff up? Because it's almost mental. He's like 12 people on his back or something.
It must have been, because I don't know how they would have tricked stuff like that. Like, I know that there was some kind of parlor tricks that they were using in those days.
But he was competing with other dudes that were in Europe, I think it was. And those people were using certain parlor tricks. But he apparently, in the movie, that's what they say anyways, that he was authentic and he was really actually lifting all those weights.
Well,
insane.
Here's to his memory.
Cheers.
Cheers. This is like drinking his blood. No, it tastes much better, actually. Yeah.
Well, better than blood, eh?
Yeah, no, like, well, maybe it's fermented. You know, he passed probably many years ago, so like any good.
It's probably his piss. No steroids in that.
Yeah, no, it tastes pretty clean.
Yeah, it's definitely.
I think I would drink that again, actually. That's a very nice.
It's not too sour. It's a good. I'm not a cider person, but
I drink a lot of cider, and this is I can honestly say some top-notch cider. I drink almost cider exclusively because I actually find beer, which used to be my love, is now just doesn't go down the pipe anymore.
Oh, really?
Huh? Yeah, ever since I hit about 40, like 2 beers give me a stomach ache.
Oh, sure.
I get crampy.
Really?
I don't want to do the whole gluten-free thing, so like I still want my bread, but I think it's just cut out fermented bread. So, and yeah, I really enjoy it. And Quebec has a lot of good ciders, and this one has it's a bit sweet. It's not as dry as some, like it, but it's tart, I guess. Yeah, but it's quite good.
I'm glad you like it.
Yeah,
I was looking forward to promoting it on the podcast. I like showing some stuff made in Quebec here on the podcast.
There's so much good stuff.
Truly,
like Bull's Head Ginger Ale as well from Richmond, my hometown. Well, now hometown. It's adopted hometown. Been there a year.
Let's get into the topic at hand. Like, we have a lot of stuff to talk about, so maybe perhaps you could explain a little bit of what you do.
I'm kind of a jack of all trades in the user experience and product design field. I my background is more visual communications. That's where I started with, and I ended up in television, and then Illustrator, and then managed to get into. It was at first web design, but the first year in, I started doing a lot of testing and started to do A/B testing, variant testing, very very simple things, and I realized how often I was wrong about my assumptions, and it humbled me. Like, there was something about coming into this field with this idea that I thought I knew because I had these trendy tastes or whatever. I was on the cutting edge and I just thought I was so cool. I don't know what it was that made me think that I could understand. And I think a lot of designers go through that. They come out and they think they're kind of like the taste leaders and stuff. I started realizing that visual communication could be used as actually a very pragmatic, instruction to your work. It can be pragmatic in so many parts of your life where you're actually utilizing products that you need that enhance your life, and it's when you need it. And I just realized that there's ways to do that. So I really got interested in the UX research and started kind of self-studying a lot of psychology, sociology, anthropology, and of course, behavioralism and the principles of UX. But I also started counteracting that with a lot of philosophy and sociology and just looking at other parts of the library to understand the human condition, because I want to understand the users. So I need to understand where they are in their day. What's life going on for these people? If you're in the pandemic, do you even want to be notified? There's so many things that are just going on. The world's changing and we don't know what the ergonomics of that world's going to be. So, me, like a lot of like the other people who are in the field with me, we're kind of sitting there going, okay, what's next? Are we going into like that almost meta world, that metaverse, or where are we going? So, these are things that have been really kind of playing on my mind.
Yeah, do you think that we've hit like a limit in regards to the technology of, let's say, the phone, or are you waiting for that next breakthrough in technology where it might be like a cyborg implant where we receive information live in our brains? Or wasn't it Elon Musk that was working on that? Like he's working on Starlink, but he's working on some other technology
kind of neural implant, Black Mirror.
That's scary kind of
type strange place. When you look at technology and where we've come in terms of progress, we have to ask ourselves, has this progress outweighed the deficit or like the
intellectual deficit?
Well, not just the intellectual deficit. If you look at it just in terms of, we can go faster than a horse and carriage, but we're also have a climate in crisis because we wanted to just go a bit faster than a horse. So the motivation is correct. And I think your idea of going back in time, going, how would someone deal with this then? That's something I often do too.
I'd be dead.
Yeah.
Because I had the eye surgery. I had glasses. They were getting really thick. But at some point, like if I were to exist 200 years ago, I would have gotten killed.
Well, that's actually somewhat debatable because because your eyes actually grow from when you're a child and your development. And if you're watching too much screens or you're reading, then you're going to build up a natural deficit in your, like, I think it's your far vision, or
it
you
was
become so you become farsighted.
Yeah,
right?
farsighted, exactly.
So I'm the same way. Now, what would be curious is if you were able to test that theory with someone who's never been in kind of a reading culture, more a hunter-gatherer culture, would that necessarily have been there? And also having sight for farther distances actually would make you a better hunter, a better scout, different things like that. So you would have your place within the pack. I
would have been a scribe. I would have been sitting at a desk just...
There you go. A historian.
Away.
Yeah. But we all had our place back then. Like, that's the way these things worked. When you had a pod of about 30 to 100 people, it was easy. Everyone had their place. Now we have societies where the people who used to be the funny person or the leader, those people are now outsourced to a celebrity, a spokesperson, someone that we all go to. So we don't laugh at the funny uncle anymore. That person doesn't exist. We've got that on late night television. We've outsourced that kind of role. And so now we have a whole group of people who would have had important places in their community who are now sitting there going, oh, I'm appreciated by no one because this has been outsourced to all the influencers. And
yeah, but that doesn't, I mean,
like we're losing that purpose. And I think that's one of the reasons, like when you talked about Joe Rogan, he brings up something like having that voice. But I think that's really, it's not just a part of being a man, but I think it's a part of being an autonomous person. You want to have say in your life. And when you feel powerless, and I think this is going to go into a lot of the reason why I think
the value system.
Yeah, the value system is being orientated not by the community you're within, but by a very small group of people, whether it's in Silicon Valley, Hollywood, London, banking industry, wherever it is. It's these small pockets of intellectual thinking that is actually determining how everyone else thinks. So their references become the references. So all roads to history lead to Rome. We're leaving out China. We're leaving out so many other...
Exactly. Yeah, it seems that throughout my research, I've noticed the pattern is that I looked into CBC. That's not true. I've looked into CBC on what they've been doing, and who is Radio Canada, I think, invested in the Pandora Papers. So they are active, and there is, a think tank is not only reserved to the States, but no, it's true that the fundamental values, I think that if it's only intellectual people that are going to have their hand on that, we're not going to make it. Because we need Joe Rogan people. We need some people from every sphere of thought and understand the core values of humans is not just wanting to be a psychological being. We have these impulses which are connected to the earth, connected to the land and the forest and moving rocks around and hunting, and I'm not someone that will go hunting, but I do understand the importance of it's a survivalist a little bit, the approach there. I'm
the same way. Like I would rather grow like a puffball mushroom and use that as my like tofu for a week than hunt a rabbit or something. I don't know. I feel more of a desire to pick the genitals off of a seedling in the ground, like mushrooms, than to pluck a living being. That reminds me a lot of my cats, I would feel really
I would panic. If I killed something, I would be, I don't know, I think I might have that instinct, and all of a sudden I got to take it out of its misery, and then I would do it. And I would feel better
my
after
worry
that,
is
purposefully killing something.
Yeah, my worry is that I would find some pleasure in it.
Yeah.
That's the part that scares me, and that's the part that scares me about power altogether. And I think, when you look at people who are in power situations like Zuckerberg or Gates, Elon Musk, these people have so much power. We're talking ridiculous amounts of power that have never been seen in the world ever. We're talking beyond governments, beyond regions. These are people who have space programs, personal space programs.
The profits of Facebook, I think it trumps, sorry to use that word, but it trumps the money made from oil, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Is that true?
Well,
that's crazy.
Data nowadays is actually worth more than fossil fuels.
Oh, my goodness.
So when you look at this, if say we're sitting here on your land and you found some oil on your land, you're digging away with your spade, boom, oh, there's some oil. It's like Beverly Hillbillies, right? But yeah, they would pay you. You would get a royalty for that oil if you owned the land. We talk about basic universal income and stuff like that. Where's our paycheck for our data? They're making literally trillions of dollars off of our data because someone said to them, Marx says you can't have infinite growth in a finite world. And these nerds are like, okay, hold my beer. Yeah, you can have infinite growth. We just pull it out of people. For as long as there's people and we want to market shit to them, we're going to use their data to do that. And we're going to make sure that it's a compulsion loop. They don't even realize they're doing it. They're just swiping, buy. It's like Amazon. When you try and refund something, They put you through hoops. You try and buy something, it's done before you even realize you did it.
Really?
Yeah, and it's set up. Like, that's what my job is. Like, I work for B2B because I don't want to do that. So I purposefully make software that's a tool. I believe in a Star Trek future over the idea of a Wall-E one. That's something I stole from Wisecrack. It's a great episode, but that's one of the things that's really important to me, and it really affected me, was this idea that you have an idea of software development where you can give insights when you need it. Or you can have something where you're a slave to that technology, like in Wall-E, where they're sitting in their pods and consuming. Whereas in Star Trek, they have no currency. They've already gotten past all this, and it's just techno-communism where it gives insights. I don't mind that.
But honestly, after researching throughout these 2 past weeks, I don't see it's feasible to develop anything that will bring about a positive outcome in regards to humanity's survival, because it's based on capitalistic system. I know it's important to have like exchange for services, but the way that capitalism today, like corporate capitalism, is not going to allow any company to develop any product or software that is going to be value-based or ethical. It's impossible.
Yeah.
Am I being nihilistic or?
Well, I think you're right. Capitalism failed. And I'm saying capitalism as past tense because I don't think what we're in now is a capitalistic society. I think we're in like whatever the necromancy or zombie form of capitalism is. When capitalism can no longer run on itself and you've got jobs that are just bullshit jobs, like David Graeber talks about. It's this idea that jobs can be like sectioned off into like, you know, enforcer and this and that. And a lot of times bullshit jobs are not even horrible jobs. It's not shit jobs. It's not like the jobs that suck, like, you know, grinding a chicken beak or something. It's those jobs that are usually in an office and they're within like a business ops. And they're really there just to maintain the bureaucracy of the company or the organization. These are make work jobs, just like at the end of the Soviet system. So when the Soviet collapse happened, you just saw that break open and there was just poverty all over the place. And unfortunately, kleptocracy took over and, you know, we are where we're at. But right now, the 2008 crash did so much damage and all they did was bail them out. So the only reason we didn't go into a depression like we did in the 1930s is because the
bailout?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Trillions of dollars in money just bailed out the banks. These banks that were actually predatory. So it's socialism for the capitalists. And then you have, you know, regular people who are losing their houses.
Yeah, because that killed the bailout. Really didn't kill the middle class, but it really accelerated that process of the middle class disappearing.
It was definitely a fatal blow.
And inflation now, with the money where it's at, the inflation is and so the value of life, the cost of living actually, and so today it's like they need to find the elites or the powers that be. They need to figure a way to level the playing field with money in the markets and all that, so anything goes from my understanding.
Oh, absolutely. But then you have this, you could say this nouveau riche that has come in over the last, I would say, post-World War, World War II. Like we're talking the real estate magnates, the DeVos family, like Amway, all these are like, they're almost like the merchant class of the feudal system. And this is the class that has really been kind of following a lot of these populist movements, and they tend to be overwhelmingly libertarian. They want smaller taxes. Like these are the $1 million companies. These are the people who own like a few franchises, you know, and these people are starting to get a lot of power. They run small towns. You know, these are the people who kind of,
were they brought about by the trickle down economy and neoliberalism and stuff?
I actually, they really pushed for that. Like when we talk about
no doubt.
neocons, like neoconservatives are kind of the ones that fit into that group. So you're looking at like Eric Prince, who owned Blackwater, which is like the largest private military firm. It's now another one. I don't even know the name. It's changed names like 3-4 times. It's crazy. But yeah, it's the largest military that's private. They have intelligence arms, everything. And so that's when things get sent over to black sites and stuff. You know, those are the people that they called to do that because they're not held down. So these corporate entities have kind of built out of this. And like when you look at, you know, Betsy DeVos, she's Eric Prince's, who was from Blackwater, like sister-in-law. And then you got, you know, Trump in with these same people. This is the same kind of class. These are the groups in Canada as well who are trying to call for less taxes, no royalties on the oil and gas, like save jobs, everything, save the pipelines. They mean well because they're trying to protect their local economies. And a lot of these people do mean well. And they're trying to like fight for like the little guy in the working class because they were there. The funny thing is they're falling right into the hands of the people who are just going to go, no, we're going to take you away. Because they're kind of in the shitty middle right now.
Are you talking like the local, well, not local, but I mean in Quebec, it was like Paul Desmarais and his connection with the Liberals and John James Charest and all that group. And
there's definitely the collusions, like when you're looking at nepotism, collusion. Oh yeah, with Quebec's like public health and just, what was it? I think it was 2016 or 17. I don't remember.
Well, it was 2012 with the following Le Printemps Érable, with when they got Charest out of there, when they said that l'île d'Anticosti was the last straw, and the students revolt, the Red Squares, Green Squares.
I protest with those marches.
That was amazing.
That was an incredible time, and I think when I look back at that time, it's funny you bring it up because there's a part which will probably go back to the beginning, but you know, where you bring up Occupy. And those protests all kind of happen around the same time, this kind of wave of people's movements. And I think it really influenced what we're seeing with the next generation. Like those kids are fierce. It's pretty cool. I think that was just the beginning. Like I think we're at a very similar time to, you know, when you look at kind of the Great Depression, you know, you look at that and the early strikes that happened with, you know, the automotive industry and all that kind of stuff. And then by the end of it all, you came out with a New Deal. And like a lot of people are talking about the Green New Deal because I think that's that hope that we can do something similar to what happened, because that's when you had the largest growth of lifting people out of poverty into like middle class incomes.
Is there a Green New Deal? Because when the Green New Deal was really being hyped, and then there was the Michael Moore produced film, that was actually the director of that film was another man that he was really debunking green energy and all that stuff. And when that came out, I'm like, oh my God, Michael Moore is financing this film. There must be some information I need to go see in there to see and if it's true. That film shocked me.
But I've never seen Moore as, like, it's funny. I see Moore as a very labor minded kind of progressive. Like he's always been kind of, you know, he tried to do a takedown of the automotive industry, like Lee Iacocca and stuff like that in the 80s. And you know, really corporate corruption, stand up for the little guy. In a lot of ways, he taps into the same frustration that those Trump supporters and like that kind of business class, like the smaller to medium business class, are kind of in, where it's like they're finally at a point where they have a voice and they have some kind of pull, but what they're working against is so entrenched. Like you're talking, you know, power that really roots back and has rebranded itself over and over again. Like if you want to look at the monarchy, like we even say it's the Queen's land, like it's crown land, all of this kind of stuff. Like
But I'm sorry I took you off topic because you were talking about the Occupy movement.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
From what I understood about the Occupy movement, and if you look at the history of things since, let's say, 2012 with Printemps Arabe in Quebec or whatever, the Arab Springs prior to that, they used technology to positive social means. They used those technologies to get to fight the injustice and to fight the fascism or like the ruling class that was in their country.
Yeah.
But it seems that this technology now is being warped, is being used for other means. Yeah. And
I think the net neutrality laws really changed a lot of that. A lot of people were fighting for net neutrality just for that one reason, because once you don't have net neutrality, the interesting thing about net neutrality is it's one of those, it was a big conversation for quite a while in tech. I worked for quite a few companies that were very for net neutrality because you could actually grow organically. Using a company, if you had the right amount of people coming and showing up, and you could grow. Whereas now, they made it harder. So it's a bit of a pay to play. So if you notice on Google, you can search things. Before, you were able to find everything. You could dig down. Have you found it harder and harder? Like I've tried to find...
I haven't noticed that. No, I haven't noticed.
Oh yeah,
really?
Things are getting buried below like 8 ads on the front page. And then you have all this kind of stuff. It's almost... that's where it becomes not neutral. You're paying to play because most people will click on the first 3 on a browser search. It's called the golden triangle. It's something that we know in UX, like how people read the screen is always the same.
I was worried about that. A few years ago, you could go online. That's true. You could find information online. You could look at documentary films, videos. You could inform yourself. And it's true. There is a layer of advertisement that's hindering that process.
Yeah. And if you'll notice, it's around the same time. So you had the Arab Spring, Occupy. You started seeing like Twitter being used as an instrument for activists to get their voice heard. You had YouTube, so with Julian Assange, and I don't know, do you remember the video with the helicopter and it kills? Okay. If it wasn't for YouTube, who would have published that? Like that being on YouTube and being searchable and being able to find that and then share it with people.
Is that what happened? He put it on YouTube, or did he just share it to a news journalist?
He shared it to a news journalist, and then from there it ended up being repeated on YouTube. And it became way more, because if that didn't happen, mainstream news would have buried that story in a heartbeat. That is an embarrassment on the D&D.
It's not pro-American.
It doesn't look good when you're like machine gunning, journalists. 4 people just walking down the street and then just opening fire on them. The video is called Collateral Damage, I believe. And it was one of the things leaked by, but that's where I first saw it, was on YouTube. And I think I saw it because I was watching Democracy Now! Videos on YouTube, which once again, this stuff actually helped open my eyes politically. The internet has been a source of good. But nowadays, I'm finding it harder and harder to find articles that I used to be able to find pretty easy. You're getting paywalls and stuff for research papers.
So doesn't that...
Personalized results, like they are personalizing everything.
It's true. They are personalizing everything. Okay, so...
the voice of reason is speaking.
Yeah, so we have the voice of reason here, and I think she should come in and actually explain that.
I could...
You should cut that out. I'm just saying that's also pretty cool.
Okay, what was that again, though?
That your search results on Google are now also personalized based on your profile. Like based on
that's true.
Data that you have. That whole I feel lucky is means that you have your personalized search results when you do a Google.
Yeah, no, we can get into that for sure, but
okay.
We're recording right now.
Yeah, no, and this is quite funny. This is...
What? You can make mistakes and cut it out, and then I can't shout out. You can cut everything.
No, it's true, but we were talking and you cut it into the conversation. If you don't want to be on the podcast, I'm gonna
Yeah, you have to jump
Okay,
in.
I'll shut up.
No, but okay,
jump in.
we'll do pauses, but
Yeah.
but that's a good call though.
No, I think
But-
it's a great call. I love the peanut gallery. It's like a message from the peanut gallery. We could totally play this off as like off-screen things that just happen. You know. So after that catastrophe just happened, and now we're back.
But I mean, nowadays, would we still face that fact that the military industrial complex has a say in what kind of information we can divulge? Like, is like today, like Julian Assange is still stuck like in limbo, isn't he?
Well,
like
I think,
and that's
we're
crazy.
talking about stuff that is like well beyond like our knowledge. I don't see.
Because you can't point fingers at the rulers, at the elites. It's still the same thing as when, like, the feudal system. You can't point fingers at your lord. It's like Monty Python type of shit there.
I think so. And you know, like Eisenhower even warned about, like, beware the industrial military complex. And I think that's why we have our forever wars. And that's why a war on terror, war on drugs exists, because it's
money.
Yeah. And so much. The majority of domestic manufacturing in the United States is still arms manufacturing.
Yeah.
So like if every terrorist in the world and everyone just put down their guns, it would actually bankrupt them. That's why
can we do a test?
No, but
about fake news and shit? Because Biden, when he came back in, he allowed all the same old, let's go back to fighting and bombing people and promoting war. Like, was that fake news that Trump actually did not do as, like, statistically, Trump did not invest in war as much as all the other presidents?
I think
we should ask Google.
I think also, okay, I think that's an unfair question, and it's a bit loaded, right? Because there's a nuance to it, because some of the tensions that Trump caused are some of the reason why there's escalation in certain areas too. Like, you know, there's a lot of world instability now because of certain partnership
approach. Yeah, no, for sure.
And you know, I can't really say. For one, I
we're
don't
not
even
experts.
live in
I'm
this
sorry,
States,
I put that on the table.
No, and I don't mind that, but I think at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. It's like red hat, blue hat. These are just. You know,
sides of the coins of the USA agenda.
Like how much do I put into lobbying this year with the Democrats, and how much do I put in with the Republicans? Like, or in this country, it's the same way. It's like, how many lobbyists do I kind of have calling liberal cabinet members and things like that? This stuff happens all the time. Like, that's lobbying. You know, think tanks, lobby groups. They literally write policies that get handed to politicians, and these think tanks have connections to big corporate, you know,
agendas,
rulers who all kind of, they get together sometimes. They probably have tea. I'm pretty sure someone's
they have tea.
Hey, I have some problems with some workers over here. Hey, don't worry. I have a private military that can run them off your lawn. You know, like, and this shit happens.
True.
And you know, the news doesn't talk about it. Like in Canada, 90% of the broadsheets and tabloids are owned by one company. And it's an American hedge fund firm that up until I think 2019 or 20 had David Pecker as like one of their main dudes. This is the guy who is embroiled in the Trump like scandal with the porn star and stuff.
Jeez, what a dick.
The guy owned National Enquirer. That's his claim to fame, and that's who owns like the Montreal Gazette, Edmonton Journal, Edmonton Sun, National Post. Every major
guy
paper.
that Enquirer, he's the guy that owns the Gazette.
He was a board member, or like one of the head board members for the company. Post Media Group is owned by, so it's owned by a bigger hedge fund group called like American. You can look it up on.
I mean, if I look up David Pecker, am I going to see some naughty photos and stuff?
No, you don't even need to look
name?
up David Pecker quite yet. You'll see him once you get in there. If you go
I used to read the National Enquirer.
Yeah.
That was a great magazine to just have fun and
No, you're thinking of the weekly world news, aren't you?
No, Inquirer. When I was a
Really?
kid, I used to read the Inquirer, and there was another
The
one as well.
gossip paper. You
The
like
gossip
the gossip
papers. But
yeah.
I think I knew I could discern that it wasn't real. It was just
No.
to amplify certain things. It was the beginning of paparazzi stuff, and
Yeah, it was the spectacle of it. This was kind of OJ times too.
Exactly, yeah.
It was the birth of the reality television kind of start. It
exactly.
Like if you think about it, Kim Kardashian's father was OJ's lawyer, right? And I can't think of what was the seed of reality television as like the OJ trial.
Oh my goodness.
And then yet, she's amassed $1 billion from being, I don't even know what. I've never watched the show, but it seems to me just like, she's made money off of people just looking at her life. And there's people who would literally pay millions to have people look in on their lives. Like that's the chaos of it all right now. That's what's so funny. Everything's so performative. Everything's so fucked up that way.
Man, it's crazy because it's either that or we're at Occupy, we're using technology in the right manner, we're trying to enrich society, we're trying to live in the proper values of life and ethically. But then...
How do we do that?
Yeah, how do we do that? But again, if we're living under a capitalistic system, I don't see it's going to happen. You can't parameter AI or algorithms if in the back there's like this elite of rich, crazy motherfuckers that are trying to make money and they're imposing. It's impossible.
Well, and I think that's the sad
The paradigm
state of
needs to change.
Yeah, I agree, and it's scary because
it sucks because the programming and developing the proper interface for user interface, it's fascinating.
Oh, absolutely. No, like what we do and a lot of my colleagues do, and even people who are in the industry who are in smaller businesses, some of them are trying to make amazing advances and trying to do things. Unfortunately, the money's in the things that can monetize. So they want the best return on your investment. So if you go to a venture capitalist, they're going to want a certain return on investment. So it becomes somewhat of...
Because Facebook's not going to change. They can't. Because if they develop their platform in a different sense, it's just going to disappear like MySpace kind of disappeared.
Well, yeah, you almost have to ask yourself, like, how do you monetize off of something that's supposed to be free? So that's just it. Like when you look at the algorithms that are picking the ads, they're the same ones, as Miriam brought up, with the Google search. How it's personalized to you. So say, for example, one thing I find weird is I turn off all my mics on my phone and stuff. Yeah, it still gets you. It's funny because you'll notice you'll be talking about like KFC or you'll talk about something weird. And we're going to use KFC as an example, not because I'm trying to advertise for them, but I'm pretty sure your computer will show you some ads of that at some point within the next couple days.
Oh my God, if it does, I'm scared.
But it more than likely will.
Oh,
Miriam and I have had like points where
I'll let you know. I'll let you know if that happens. I'll let you know because that's scary if it happens. Because Google's right there.
I was working for one company and we were doing a type of software. I can't really get into it because a lot of lab works and you signed NDAs and stuff. But what I found interesting was we were talking about the type of software that we were developing. Before you know it, we were all getting like ads from the competitors in our our
feed.
Yeah, in our feeds and stuff. And it was so interesting because I didn't think I had anything on, like my mic was hot, but they're in our phones, our laptops, everywhere. The Guardian's done some amazing reporting on that where they went undercover in I think it was an Irish Apple warehouse where the call center where they were actually listening in on the Siri. And that's their job because it's not there yet. Like there's still humans kind of helping the AI along to get to the point where it is self-learning, which is gotta just suck, man. Like you're training yourself out of a job, right? So you're
oh yeah, that's true. Right?
Yeah, so you're doing this kind of meandering task to then end up being replaced by something. It's just
it's
dystopian.
it's scary because the AI, as we see it in Terminator, that's like the interpretation of at that era what the film was going to be is like AI was like a dangerous robot. But today, from what I see with everything going on, the AI isn't even omniscient, doesn't even know who he is or her or whatever the sexist gender of this AI is going to be, but it's still dangerous what's going on. It's cultural warping.
Yeah, and I've always found the name really unfortunate. Like they call it AI, and I think it brings back that same fear. Really, it's machine learning. Like all it is like imagine a massive decision-making tree that ends up starting to see patterns in the decisions that are being made. So it can learn and start being able to give you predictability engines. And there's a lot of things AI can do. That's not the only thing, but that's one of the things that I've seen that's pretty amazing about it. Now, what makes me sad is there's a lack of imagination of what to do with this data. Instead of saying, oh, we could sell Bob over here like a ring or like Sally here a hat. Instead, we could have been figuring out how to deal with like global food supply chains based on weather, based on different things. Like how do you bring these things in together, these insights to create better strategic planning, better ways to do these like some of these tasks where you're giving insights. And that's why I mean like the Star Trek future. You'd see like Geordi going over to Data going, hey, I need this. Oh, just ask the computer. Computer, like, does this come with this? And then the computer's like, yeah. It's kind of like, well, I'm, of course, paraphrasing.
I understand.
Yeah, because Star Trek's nothing like that.
Well, I mean, there is the quote of Picard that I keep bringing back up. Like, that's an amazing quote. I can read it if you want. But the acquisition of health is no longer the driving force in our lives. We work to better ourselves and the rest of humanity. That's definitely what we're all thriving towards. But, I mean, the problem with the AI, exactly. We're not using for the right reason. Because instead of making profit more efficient and finding a way to sell more stuff, like we should be coming back, and we're talking about the roots initially with like Rogan and his philosophy on his podcast. I mean, it's getting back to the earth. It's moving rocks around. It's like the trees is respecting nature, understanding that we're part of that ecosystem. And I think that probably one of the core values of any AI would be to push humanity to, or not push as a maybe a little bit arrogant, the word there, but that's what the AI would do. It seems that that's what would happen. I mean, the AI would coerce or inspire individuals to understand the ecosystem and to be a part of it and enrich themselves spiritually, intellectually, and physically, and helping others as well. I mean, that's...
I think that's a really interesting thought, and something I'm going to take a minute to think about this, because I think you're the hopeful side of me is thinking exactly what you're saying. Like, imagine if you harness the kind of technology we have today to try and figure out the change management it's needed to get people on track with like actually climate crisis management. And that is really kind of reckoning back to nature, kind of looking at where we stand in it, where we belong. You know, changing ourselves kind of from the agrarian who's like taking from the land and having processing and putting it in surplus storage to the idea of like take what we need, leave things for others, kind of more share and stuff. And I think a lot of people, when they hear that, they're like, oh, that's communism or that's idealism. And it's funny because I always get annoyed when someone brings up idealism. They're like, you're idealistic, but it's okay to be a perfectionist. Like these like government wonks and stuff like that, and like people in corporations, they're like, oh, I'm a perfectionist. And it's like, but then I'm an idealist. I'm no different than you. It's just my ends aren't for money, status, and like a position. My aim is to like, how do we move ourselves in a direction using this technology in a way that's humanist?
I like what Tristan Harris is trying to do.
Yeah, me too.
He's trying to be ethical and presenting these philosophical, moral concepts to his guests on his podcast. But he's still pushing that agenda of creating a governing algorithm or AI to further this situation. I mean, perhaps he's hoping for a change in the basic capitalist system and making more like a product-based economy. I don't know his points of view on that, so I can't say that he's wrong, but
I find that one so tough.
Again, we're still in a system that's capitalistic, so until that changes, I don't see this AI or algorithm or infrastructure of working, because there's always going to be data mining, there's always going to be Facebooks, there's always going to be this Wizard of Oz dude behind the curtain trying to pull strings. Like the humane technologies, humane, that sounds like a humane way of killing people. Humane is not a good PR thing, I think, to use as a word.
And I think that goes back to like something that we hear all the time, and that's human resources or human capital management. Like that's another one that we hear all the time. You know, they use words like onboarding. Like to me, that sounds like you're walking like cattle up a ramp to go to the slaughterhouse.
Yeah, exactly.
And the opposite's true too, offboarding. You know, sure, like some companies are starting to call their departments people departments, things like this. And that's good. And I do think there is a shift happening. I wish the language was different because it comes off somewhat infantile, but I think it's in the right place because they're starting to say, no, wait a minute, like people have needs at work, and HR departments are now becoming more about making sure the staff's looked after. They do like wellness things. Like at my, you know, the place I work, they actually have you know, stretches on Thursdays and you come onto a Zoom. I've never been on one, but I'm glad they have that because that's helping people who are in the pandemic. They're locked in at home. Some of these people live on their own. And, you know, to be able to see another person smile across the camera, you know, you do a group activity. It might not be the same as when you're in a group. But all I'm trying to say is like, these things I think are a step in the right direction. I don't think they're where they need to be because I think when we get to that point, you're not going to have only knowledge workers in these kind of office positions. You're going to also have everyone else. And I think that's the problem. There's not enough lifting up. We're not lifting up other job sectors to make their jobs easier.
But it's competitive. It needs to be competitive in this certain system.
Yeah, exactly. So, but imagine if you could make tools to make people's jobs safer at least. Like if you were, you know, say working, like I did a project long ago. I was working for a construction company's app, and it was one to do inspections. And so I just followed one of the inspectors around, and I realized that he was sitting there with his clipboard and he was writing stuff down. And he was missing leaks. Like I was like, dude, like there's a leak over there. And he was like, oh, okay, thanks. And then I realized like, wait a minute, if you kind of created something that you could do voice to text and you could use the camera, you know, which is very easy now. And now there's tons of stuff like this. But this was like in 2010, we came up with this. But that idea works because it's a tool. Like when we came down to the UI, it looks so gross. Like there's no way I would have ever put it in my portfolio because this thing was so like high contrast because back then you didn't have the anti-glare screen. So you had to have something if you were outside that was high contrast. It was a tool. It wasn't like, but the graphic design side of me that went to school, I was like, oh, you're going to just curl up and die. But no, you want to make something that works though.
But it's a great effort. And I think that in regards to Tristan Harris, I think that it is absolutely necessary that people that work in that field of developing programs and content to not control, I keep saying control because control is not as pejorative, but I mean, he's developing, it's really important to have someone that has ethical and proper moral values to work in that field, because if the people that are preparing those programs, they don't have those strong pillars, those strong philosophical pillars, they're going to end up working for a company and they're going to just think profit and they're just going to do as they're told and make as much money no matter what, and no matter what the program does.
And I think that,
so his show's amazing. His podcast is good. I
think he also gives voice to other people in that industry. like when he first came out, I was like, thank you, someone, for saying this, because it's something that, you know, working in the tech industry, you know, people like that, it's hard.
Because he was in Google and he flagged something, and for 2 or 3 days it seemed like it was going to change everything, but then it just faded out and nothing happened.
And I'm pretty sure there's, you know, tons of other UX people that, you know, that can relate to this, where you literally have your findings. Like I've done a user test that has performed, like showed that the idea that the big boss wanted didn't work. And instead of acknowledging and saying, okay, well, how can we pivot and change and like make this work? It was like, can you change your findings? and it's like, morally, I can't. Like, I can't. I said, you can choose to ignore them. Like, I guess that's the best you can do. And at the end of the day, you can't really fight back. And for that one, that's not a hill to die on. It's like, okay, dude, you're going to just throw more money in it. It's like, this isn't like...
I got to put bread on the table. I'm not going to lose my job for this.
But when you're dealing with Facebook and them not listening to like research that's coming back saying, oh, wait a minute, this is affecting, you know, young girls. This is
suicide rate is
the suicide rate, like
up.
Polarization. You're looking families like breaking down because of this culture war. Like,
and I'm not saying from Facebook, but probably more for TikTok. I think I'm not exactly sure which platform is responsible for the suicide rate going up. But
I think it was Instagram. Instagram,
is it?
Yeah, I think
it's an image thing, right? It's like the girls they look at themselves and they're trying to be prettier than all the other ones, and it plays with that.
Some of us guys are too. Like, how many guys are trying to get six packs? When I was a kid, I don't think any actor except like Bruce Lee had a six pack. Like you had Sean Connery, he was like Mr. Universe, and he was like barrel chested.
He would tuck in his stomach on the photos. Just to look like, the 60s look. Yeah.
Like, and women looked like normal women, and men did. Like somewhere along the line, someone said, "Oh, you know how comic book people look?
Yeah.
Can we have everyone look like that?" Like you just think that maybe, you know, Zuckerberg or one of these nerds up at the top, they're like, I love comic books. Can we get like long boots and like and spandex to be the thing, and like everyone go into CrossFit because I really liked Image Comics when I was a kid. You know, like you just,
it's the physical ideal, and
you feel like Rob Liefeld or left field or whatever, the guy who did like
Rob Liefeld, who drew Captain America with like this abnormal shaped body,
He was saying where we're gonna go by like 2100. That's what that's the man of the future. Like more abs. Yeah,
TikTok is scary. I mean, TikTok speaking of algorithms, the algorithms on TikTok are insane. They really latch on to the number of moments that you spend looking at a specific photo, and then they're just going to shoot you back with that kind of stuff. I tried to get into TikTok a little bit, but I think it's too young for me, for my liking. The content is very adolescent. It's very impulsive, very intense.
Well, that's the compulsion loop. Okay.
Quick, immature, very intense. Yeah. There's some good stuff on there, obviously, for humor, but it's very
much like, imagine if you were to go into a casino in Vegas. You've been to Vegas?
I have not.
Okay.
But I can understand what you're trying to get at.
So it's usually a round room, right? So you don't see the entrance.
And they shoot oxygen to get you to
they use oxygen. Sometimes they'll use scent marketing, which is an idea, like an appealing scent.
Spend more money, smell lavender.
Kind of. But one of the things that you always hear is it's noisy, right? Noise is one of the first ways to like discombobulate someone. You can't think straight. You're more likely to be impulsive if there's loud noise. Now, the slot machines, you've got an action which is going to release a little bit of like that feel-good juice, right? And then all of a sudden, you know, you get reward. That's going to release a certain thing, and then you're going to anticipation. It's this cartwheel of brain drugs just going off.
Yeah, that's true. That was the initial kind of interactive addiction.
Well, that was
template.
Where the inspiration came from. So that was developed in the 1970s, I believe.
By a mobster?
Well,
Probably.
I think it was.
What was
it
his
was,
name there? Sure.
It probably could be. I'm not too sure who originally came up with that, but it did come up in Vegas. So, I'm just saying, maybe there was some like,
yeah.
Vegas was kind of created by the mafia. I'm not saying it was though. No, it was definitely not Bugsy Siegel, but Meyer Lansky. Like he had.
Oh, it was Robert De Niro.
No, Robert De Niro's character.
Yeah.
Well, in Casino, that was based on a real guy too. But that was right at the end when the RICO Act kind of took over, and then a lot of the stuff in the 80s was then, you just saw Trump and stuff come in, and not at all connected.
But we're running off. We're off track. But
go back
the user
to
experience of
so that
cranking the.
So if you'll notice more and more, you'll see things that are shift slides, things like that. That actually triggers us. That movement, very similar to like, using like a one-arm bandit. It's the exact same kind of feeling. You kind of pull down and you hope for something new. It's like you go onto your Gmail and you pull down and you wait for the new message to pop up. Like I think they even talked about that in The Social Dilemma. It's the whole idea of that. So
yeah, well, Tristan Harris said that he was addicted to his emails.
Absolutely. And funny thing enough is a lot of us who actually design these things get addicted to it, and we know how this stuff works. Well, we do and we don't. A lot of people go on
There's
to
no training for that.
There is training.
Oh yeah.
It's usually quite expensive, or it's like PhD level or master's level. Concordia now has a UX program. I don't know how it'll be. It's very interesting because I've been in it for 10 years now. And so a lot of it was self-study. Like I started reading psychology books. My ex-wife had like psychology textbooks I'd go through, like different things like that. You really wanted to understand behavioralism. But one of the things that brought me into B was to get away from leaning so much on the idea of behavioral psychology and looking at more at sociology and archaeology, because you're looking at tools, like how these tools work. And I think that's the switch we need to make. And the reason why we're leaning so much on behavioralism is because those,
that's what's going to yield the most profit. Because
exactly.
if you can control people through behavioralism.
Yeah, because it's way harder to get a group of people to do something like in terms of sociology, but it's better payoff because you're able to get people to do something for the good of a community or what have you. This individualism,
short-term versus long-term.
Exactly.
Socialism would be more like a long-term yield, whereas behavioralism would be more like a short-term.
It's almost instant. You could be like, one of the things that's really difficult about having a job that you're on the computer is you're also tempted to go on to Instagram, or you're tempted to go on to something else and look at your feed, and you get into that kind of refresh and, maybe someone's going to try and talk to me, because you're at home, right? But then you're spending more time on there, and you're supposed to be working, and you do. So then you work longer hours because that's how you balance it out. I wasted half an hour, so I'm going to work an extra half an hour. And then you're on this computer for like 10 hours, 11 hours, and you've been advertised to quite a bit through it, whether you're on YouTube, whether you're,
But you've been contributing to the economy by clicking those likes and contributing
Absolutely.
to social media. So you should get money in return.
Kind of. And that's almost what it feels like. So like, this is our
Mark
job.
Zuckerberg.
It's almost like a mining type thing. But
Send me a check, Mark Zuckerberg.
I argue that we can do it, at least if we're going to pretend to work, let's make it fun. Let's make some of these softwares fun. Or let's not automate the things that people love. Let's give them the better way of doing it. The way that I'm going to bring this back to something we brought up earlier about how, looking at how someone did something 200 years ago. looking at, this is exactly what we should be doing. We should say, when was it at its perfection? When it was in the analog world? When was that job the most fun? When was it the most efficient? Now let's take that experience and bring that into the new world where now you have the insights you need at your hand. So the things that made the job suck, automate out. But the things that you love doing, like I saw this picture of like these old draftsmen like back in the day, and they were laying on this giant platform and they were all drawing on stuff. And I was like, my God, I would love to do that. I would kill to like hang out with a bunch of artists all day drawing on like big sheets of paper.
Slow down time and just enjoy the moment.
Oh, it would be wonderful.
Yeah.
You know, but we could do that with technology. We could do things like that and kind of bring back that spirit. And I think some places are going that way with, you know, interactive, collaborative environments. I think they're getting into that. And same with like, you know, the gaming industry. But I think what we're losing is we're losing that personal connection, that like one-on-one, like you and I talking and connecting. If we did this on Zoom, we're not going to have the same feeling. It's going to feel like there's more than a wall between us. You don't feel the other person's energy. You don't feel their emotion. You know,
there's nothing replaces that. No, that's true. And we're building towards something that totally is at the opposite of that. And I think that it's moral values need to be, we need to find a way to monetize moral values, ethical values, without going into 1984 there, and then you point the finger at the neighbor that's trying to be honest and trying to go against the government there. But yeah, moral values, being ethical, it needs to be recognized. Like YouTube wrote me a message when on my podcast page, and they're like, do you feel valued? How can we make the experience better? I'm like, well, my content is not cats or dogs. It's not impulsive, energetic TikTok kind of content. So nobody's trying to find my content.
You're not making bread and circus.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. The Roman. Yeah. Well, should we explain that phrase to people?
Bread and circus is just like when Rome was starting to hit the bricks. One of the strategies that they used to try and keep people kind of content was just cheap entertainment and food. And, you know, it's basically what consumerism has become. Like, it's another form of it. We ignore the actual news. Like, we don't discuss, like, say, for example, the net neutrality policies because it becomes buried under something to do with Trump or whoever was in power, or, you know, some idiot falling up the stairs, or, you know, a sex scandal, or identity politics, or whatever it is. We lose out on these policies, and the time that it takes to like be able to stop those, we don't have that window because there's almost a media blockout.
But it's impulsive. It's now. It's content that you can devour now. It's not interesting if you have to go read about net neutrality. You're tired at the end of the day. You just want to relax, watch TV, and that's normal. But the system is using us in that sense where we can't.
It is.
We don't have the energy to go read on that. So, and so YouTube sent me that message asking me to like, how can we help you to value your experience? And I'm like, well, intellectual content needs to be appreciated, needs to be promoted more.
I agree.
And I think it was Bernie Sanders. I love Bernie Sanders, but one thing he was trying to do was to tax Netflix more, and I don't know to what extent he should promote that idea, and probably should. I don't know what Netflix status is in regards to like not paying their taxes. They probably do, but I mean, they have a lot of intellectual content that we wouldn't have access to if it wasn't there. Like,
I think that's an interesting thing, and I think it always comes down to like what are, you know, because corporate taxes only come on once you make a profit, right? So they're, you know, if they're not paying taxes, then they're not making a profit. That means they're spending all the money back into whatever they're doing. They're probably somehow putting it into charities or whatever. I think what worries me is like, I understand where that instinct comes from. Like some of these people might even think they're doing good by putting that money into this charity or that benefit. Because once again, it represents their ego. They see this benefit, this charity worthy of their affection and their support. Whereas tax means every grub, even the ones that they don't like, have to get supported and have. And I think that's why that elitism is so, unnerving for a lot of people. It's because this idea that one group is seen
holier than thou.
Well, not even holier than thou. Just, that's the trend this month is this group of sick people, so we're going to give to them because it's trendy. But when you give to taxes, it's kind of like you're putting in a system that helps the public as a whole, and that's how it should be. Of course, if you've got lobby groups owning your government and you have politicians who are corporate lawyers one day and now politicians the next, like it's hard to separate corporate culture from politics. So it's all the same thing. Yeah. It's just the political wing of the corporate strongmen. But how do we wrestle it back? And I think that's just it. I think in technology lies the answer just as much as it's the problem too.
Man, the problem is, I agree, but it's the communication channel, like net neutrality, since it's apparently non-existent in the USA and in Canada. I can remember what we looked at it briefly, but
couldn't find much about it actually.
I mean, if we can't communicate, and that's what the internet was meant for, for us to communicate. So if that's not there, then there's just going to be a takeover, and I've seen it happen slowly but surely with, do you remember the panel of 5 people that were supposed to decide on the future of who owns the internet? I'm paraphrasing there, but I've been looking that up. I'm trying to figure out. A few years ago, there was 5 people who were supposed to vote on the internet, who was going to privatize the internet, was it allowed? But I mean, the internet was
that's getting into exactly what you're saying. This idea of news stories that just burn out so quick. You're right. There's so many of these things that I've even lost track of, or you lose track of it for a while. I went through this whole binge of wanting to look up the Iran-Contra deals. Because I completely forgot about that. I remember it as a kid. I remember Oliver North being on the news, and I remember that being kind of a big thing.
He sold weapons to Nicaragua, and Reagan was behind it.
Yeah, and it was money was being sent through Israel to arm, something to do with Iran, and anyways, I don't want to get into it too much, but crazy story. Read it.
Well, we forget stuff as humans.
Yeah,
we forget.
But then you look at some of these people and they're still around. This Oliver North, he was the NRA president for a while. This guy is still in
he's still there.
Yeah, he's still a kingmaker.
That's the thing. If we remembered everything, if we were able to remember how history can teach us, we wouldn't be in this predicament. We're flawed, and I don't think that we can contend against we can't contend with the AI. The AI is going to take over because we can't remember what happened 2 days ago.
but I think you're right and wrong. I think AI actually, if you look at it as machine learning, the ability that certain algorithms could do where it could actually look at population data and, start looking at historical figures and just starting to do actually there's a group, I think Peter Turkin's a part of. He wrote a book called Ultra Society. His group is a group of different scientists who are using data to be able to understand the patterns in our culture, when we're closer to revolution and it normally has to do with a population increase at a point where there's low resources, different things like that, or there's an overpopulation of elites, or you have an overproduction. But he's starting to look at these things in the same way that we look at it in biology. I think he was a biologist evolutionary anthropologist. Yeah, so he ended up, discovering all this stuff. And I've got his book at home. I still haven't finished it, but what I've read so far, I'm like, wow, this is what AI should be used for. It's kind of looking at these patterns of behavior. How can we correct ourselves? How can we manage these things. Because say you wanted an AI that kind of worked for the benefit. Imagine if the AI was helping maintain food supply chains, different things that are needs and basics to make sure that every man, woman, child has the three or like whatever needs that we consider basic needs. Like all your needs are met and technology's brought it to you because you don't have to pay for that bureaucracy. It's doing it in the background. You know, if that was a technology to go to the future, yeah, maybe. Even still, how do we know because we didn't design those patterns of behavior that it's not going to do some of the nefarious things us humans do once we scale too big?
Yeah. Well,
like maybe
I mean,
we just can't scale. Maybe
no, that's
can
true.
scale.
I just feel that AI, like AI, we should define AI because AI for me is always Terminator, but AI can take a mind of its own. It can be a singularity. It can become something that we lose control of. And at that moment, how do we interface with that higher power, intellectual power, if we can't even remember what happened 2 days ago? And that the thing that brings about that I think that will happen is probably cyborg implants where we can interface with the AI in order to comprehend what it's telling us.
Oh, yeah. Isn't there something like Neuralink or something like that?
But that's what's happening. Into? That's what Elon Musk wants to bring about. And
that's
telepathic. Pardon me?
It's a Black Mirror episode too.
Yeah,
they have that. It's just
it could happen. So either it's the AI that we need to interface with that might be not the downfall of humanity, but it's going to be one of the problems that we're going to, that we will have to face that fact that we need to interface with a higher intelligence eventually. I mean, it might not happen that way, but it seems that that's what
it's more than likely.
Hollywood wants.
Well, yeah, and let's face it, all Hollywood ever does is it's testing the market to see if we'll like it or not. They did it with torture and like movies up until like quite recently where it's like, oh yeah, people seem okay with torture. Okay, so yeah, we can just, not follow those conventions. It's like to see where our patients are. And I think that's exactly it. You're saying it, but I think Hollywood's tested how the public would react in a way to artificial intelligence, having that AI. And I think what's really interesting is I think we're starting to see somewhat of a shift in that opinion. When you think about the original like debate of artificial intelligence, it really comes back to Frankenstein.
That's true, right?
Yeah. And so you have a North American viewpoint, which is very much like if we created something that was intelligent, it would mirror back to us like our evil and take on the cold ruthlessness and that destroyer side of our idea. Whereas when you look at the Japanese, a lot of times the way that they look at AI in their science fiction is usually this idea of someone who sees us for what we are, but is somewhat better, but because it's taken the betterment of mankind. Both of these are kind of wishful thinking. This is people doing like the mental exercise, trying to figure out what AI is going to be. Fact is, none of us will know. If we did, then we're already at a very high intelligence. But I can't help but think if you were to take something that could see all the recorded history of all of humanity and all the data that we have from all the different sciences, I don't think this would be some cold calculating Terminator.
No, it'd be way more conniving. I keep going back to Wizard of Oz there, but
do you think it would? Like,
don't even
would
know.
Greed be even part of the DNA, or would greed be part of the DNA because we've programmed it with the idea of greed to begin with in the marketing schemes that we're training it to be? So maybe we need to look at where the root of the training lies. If we're making it into a greed and basically like sell people things that they don't want to control them or to like persuade them for political gain, that's a very cynical mindset to start AI off with.
That's what worries me is like preparing the AI, like people working on that information and injecting those values or the calculations into the AI for it to be able to coerce us or make us function as a society with like the proper values. I don't even know how you can compute or translate values in zeros and ones.
And that's where quantum computing comes in, because it's no longer going to be binary. So Quantum computing's looking at things in a different paradigm shift, and that's just it. Like you're right. The zeros and ones is kind of the backbone of the whole way that we look at computers now, and that's based on an older theory that people thought in terms of basically binary. It's a group of decisions. You make one decision or you make another, and that decision tree. So that's why we've kind of got this model. But more and more, they're starting to see that the brain is much more complex. And it isn't, there's a lot more aspects, but it's now these computer models that are seeing it. So it's going to be very interesting, quantum computing with AI, like real AI, where you start looking at something like a machine brain. How do we start that off? And I think that's where these conversations of, how do we get rid of bias in the tech world? How do we kind of remove some of these malaligned, beliefs that we're seeing kind of throughout history? You call it the market
desire to
Cain,
make
right?
money,
like
or
whatever, yeah.
conquer,
greed,
or,
power, all this. So how do you make a better person? And maybe that's just it. Like the idea of if you're trying to make your own God, are we willing to follow its example if we make it like the ideal of what humanity could be? Are we all willing to fall in line?
Yeah, exactly. Because we're slowly being removed from our own roots as like, we're not an animal. We're trying to be psychological. We're trying to be intellectual. But
yeah. Well, look at how many people are like, we are becoming a creature not of this earth. We don't sleep on the land. We don't interact with nature. How many people are deathly allergic to so many things? And of course, that has to do with modern medicine and sanitation. And we didn't have people die at birth and stuff that probably these people have greatly impacted. So it's awesome that this technology exists, that we can share this planet with more people. But the more and more we detach from the earth, we detach our purpose on the planet.
Yeah.
What are we here for? And I can't help but think, like, it's amazing. I'm not a nationalistic person at all, but the symbol of the beaver in Canada, I'm kind of like, yeah, that's cool, because that's kind of what we do. It's like we till the land a bit, like in the garden, you make stuff. You're the same way. You move rocks around. We're just basically big beavers. We're European beavers. They didn't have them in North America long time ago. So like Africa got a bunch of humanoids and North America got beavers. And it's just, we did the same function. We just moved away debris and kind of swept some stuff up, killed some of the weak herd and stuff. We had a balance. And I think probably people lived fairly happy. Everyone says, but I don't think they were sick all the time. I think they were very well balanced. They might not have lived very long, like maybe to 40 and stuff. But I'm 46, and I gotta say, like, if I lived a really enjoyable life, hunter-gatherer and stuff like that, I think I would have been fine. Like, you probably would have done all the things that you needed to do. Like, finally got that elk, or...
Yeah. But it's bringing back to the core values of what is a human, and translating that into either ones and zeros or quantum technology or quantum computing. I think that we're inevitably digging ourselves a technological tomb. And there's the James Burke documentary from 1978 that it's crazy, because the foresight in that documentary where he was presenting these concepts that apply for today. And I mean, if you get a chance to watch it,
I would love to see that.
It's James Burke is such a inspiring individual at BBC in the 78 it was. And he was, the context was lights out, some kind of electrical problem, just a tiny piece of, I don't know what kind of engine broke down, and like it's just that as context, like there's a piece of engine and brakes, so nobody knows how to repair it, and they don't even know that it's broken, so people are in the train and they just revert back to like being communal and keeping each other aloft in this time of crises. And it's a beautiful story, but it brings about that. And then he puts into context historical, the beginning of the plow, how empires were built and agriculture and all that stuff. So it's a great story. But yeah, the technological tomb. I mean, I don't even know how to fix a toaster. I wouldn't even try to build a toaster. It's impossible with all the plastics and metals, the way they're made. It's like today there's...
But do you, if you had to like just toast something...
just go outside and make a fire.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like you say you don't know how to make a toaster, but you do know how to make toast without these things. Like this is one of the things that, you know, we always look back at another technical device that really was only around for like, I think toasters have only been around for like 100 years tops. Like I don't think there's something that they used to have. You know, monasteries didn't have the
no, that's true.
The like rodent wheel run toaster. Like they just connected like a potato up to like.
But anything post like industrial revolution,
exactly. Like, but people survived.
We don't
people
know how to do it.
Were able to do those things, and I'm pretty sure people lived happy lives. I know we love to think everyone lived in a Dickens novel, but even Dickens' time was like a strange period where you had a massive urbanization of England and France. You know, you had people who went from living on the farm to now working in factories and doing like 10, 12-hour day labor for like, you know, these fiefdoms that were happening. And they were so disconnected from nature, like case in point now as well. And we're getting into this same thing. And this is one of the things like Peter Turking and different other people say, when we are disconnected from nature, we actually disconnect from ourselves in a way. We become disbalanced. And I think...
Because that's where we're going, though.
But I think that's where technology needs to catch up too. You're looking at...
Because if I don't have my Google, well, I'm not going to listen to music. I'm not going to be able to use Google Chromecast and send some videos on the TV. But who cares? You know, I can get my guitar and I can play guitar.
Exactly. Or you can move rocks around and kind of make your land the way you want. Or, you know, that's just it. When you're doing those things, it's amazing how well you think. And that's what people are scared of nowadays. People are scared of the silence of their own thoughts. So they amuse themselves with everything. And yet, I realized this winter, we finally I got a house. I've never really lived in a house before. So I've never had to do chores like snow shoveling. So this year I got into it, and at first I was like, this is going to suck so bad. Because as a kid, I remember, like, if someone asked me to shovel, I'd be like, this sucks. I'm not doing it. It was the 80s. Every kid had attitude. That's what you did. It was almost like taught to us. And so here I am shoveling the snow. Oh my God, this is fun. And so like next time, like I started getting excited for when there was snow, because what I was finding is as I was shoveling, I was actually problem solving a lot of the issues I had at work. And that kinetic energy of this. And one day I even sat there going, my God, I used to pay like in Montreal, you know, $80 to $100 for like a gym membership, which I'd rarely ever use. I'm not going to kid myself. I'm a big dude. I'm built for comfort, not speed, you know? And the the fact is, though, I would spend this money when I could have been just outside shoveling. Like, I could have asked neighbors if I could have shoveled. Like, there's probably old people would have been happy to, like, have me shovel. And it's exercise, and I'm giving back. And so I realized that thing that we all want to postpone, which I call the grind, is actually some of the most important thinking time. We don't need a guided meditation class. Seriously, just crosshatch for 2 hours at an ink drawing, and like, my God, you feel so much better. Like it's wellness, it's mindfulness, it's all of that. And at the end, you got a really cool drawing, you know. But other people have different things. Like, look at old religions; they had the prayer beads. It's kinetic. We're kinetic. We need to move. This idea of sitting still might work for people who, you know, are able to train their mind to do that, because that's difficult for some people when they got worries about kids, they got worries about their lives, everything. But there's something about, like, whether it's knitting or something mindless that helps you think and problem solve. And that's kind of what we need to get back to with technology. We don't need technology taking over that time. We need technology there when we're like, something's in our mind and we're like, hey, you know, blah, blah, blah. What is this? I forget. And then them being able to tell you, and then you continuing on with your thought. You want it to be like insights when you need it, and to help do the heavy lifting of like, say, calculations and things that are brutal, but don't take away the thing that people love about their job. Like I work with a lot of visual design software, and more there's auto layouts and stuff. It's like, dude, leave it alone. I kind of want to do my own layouts because that's why I went into design. Like I want to like, I love that little kind of adjust here, adjust there. It's the grind that it takes away. And that's what I'm getting back at with how computers and can kind of help us is find that balance, because I think that's the yin yang. That's the balance that we need in our thinking. Yeah, it's just the idea of really finding balance between the two. And like, I think there's ways that we can find that in modern computing, that it can encourage a level of that. And maybe there's ways that you can put some kind of kinetic energy into it. I know a lot of companies are talking about flex time and really encouraging their workers to go exercise and stuff when they do have a problem solve. So I think there is people looking at the issue of the future of work. It's just right now it's so consumer capitalist based, and the AI is running in these marketing algorithms mainly. And it's just, I feel like there's a lack of imagination right now for where we could take technology. And yeah, if we keep going the way we're going, where it's just so market driven and it's so much about sales and data to collect to like use people, I think we're going in the wrong direction. And I think it's going to be harder and harder to course correct the further and further we tangle that ball of Band-Aids up,
Totally. And those philosophies that will help the people to understand that concept and to adjust themselves and to better understand and enrich themselves ethically in order to move forward with developing these technologies. There's different viewpoints. There's either there's one person that I liked when I did my research was Jaron Lanier.
Oh yeah,
who's more like not including technology in an everyday day-to-day basis. And it was also Pamela Paul, I think, who wrote the 100 Things the Internet took.
Yeah. Oh my God, that book sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do I have the name of the book exactly?
I think it's
Pamela Paul.
100 Things We've Lost or something because of the internet.
Because of the internet. I'm sorry, it might be the wrong name, but in any case, and so there's that level, but there's also on the opposite side, there's like, from my understanding, there's Tristan Harris, who's like open to like readjusting and adjusting Facebook, adjusting TikTok and Google, and trying to make it a better user experience that doesn't use data mining or use our information to enrich the elites. So
I think they, to answer your point, like in terms of a philosophy though, like those are somewhat differing philosophies, but I think they're all coming from the same motivation. They're just offering us different ways to deal with it.
Because since I've seen the documentaries on Netflix,
the social dilemma.
The social dilemma. I mean, I've let my phone downstairs. I don't even bring it in my room anymore. I'm like, oh my God, it made me realize so many things.
Oh, I'm so compulsive at times. Like I go back and forth between compulsion with the phone and things like that. I've weaned myself off of it so many times. It's like I don't know if you ever were a smoker, but there's like this kind of idea, like later on, you go to a party, have a couple of drinks, next thing you know, you're a smoker again. Like there's, it's kind of the same way with the cell phone for me. Like I can wean myself off of it, and then I get excited about some Instagram drawing I put up there, and next thing you know, I'm back on there. Oh, okay, here I'm gonna look at this site again, and you just compulsively start looking at things. It's sticky AF, right?
Throughout all this very serious discussion that we have, I mean, do you want to promote your Instagram page?
Oh, sure.
While we're at it.
It's Matt Gardner Inc. Yeah. It's got some of my drawings, like some just meditations. A lot of the ways that I draw is kind of based on what we were talking about right there. I did illustration for a while. I was getting, I was doing okay at it. I was living in Vancouver. I was able to make a living. 2008 happened, crash, boom. I found myself in tech, right? So when I lost the ability to kind of do illustration as a job because it no longer kind of paid the bills and couldn't become my like full-time living, I actually stopped drawing like for many years. Like it became something, and I found that my mental health was eroding over time. And about 4 years ago, maybe even 3, like I just started getting back into drawing bit by bit. And I think I was doodling at work a lot, and it was getting comments. People were like, oh, that's cool. And so I started getting kind of back into it. And I realized that I had these sketchbooks all my life filled with unfinished drawings. And I said to myself, well, this is why I'm not getting anywhere with this. Like nothing's finished. And I realized that persistence, that grind we were talking about is so important. So I said, every picture has to start with a mark. So I start with a mark and I do it in ink. And from there, I build onto it. And the one rule is I have to finish every drawing I start. Not in one night. Like some drawings take like 6 months. You know, it's one of those things where it's the persistence of doing it. Because I'm pretty sure you're an artist too. Like there's that point in every drawing where it looks like crap. You're looking at it going, there's no way I can fix this. Yeah. There's absolutely no way. But if you're drawing in ink, you're like, okay, I gotta fix this because I'm living with this for, you know, the next several hours. And then I just put it out there kind of on Instagram, and I'm hoping like eventually like people will find an interest in it and maybe I can, you know, make a living off of it again. But I'm really doubtful, and it doesn't matter either way because it's the process. And I'm really inspired by like how Buddhist monks will do those sand mandalas
and then destroy them.
And then just destroy them. And it's like, yeah, because the journey is what mattered. It was never, it's not about the finished product. I more and more, I have no ownership over my drawings. Like they're just out there. And it was like a group of thoughts that kind of merged together and made something. And it's kind of let go, and it's its own thing now. Yeah. So you just let it go. And I think that's just like the Mandela. I would love to get to the point where I could just destroy the work, but I grew up in the 80s, and my ego is too like much based on like status anxiety and everything else, like every other modern human. And we want that social validation, that external validation that comes from peers and stuff going, hey, you did a good job.
Well, the ephemeral is scary.
Oh, it is, isn't it?
Ephemeral, like things, it's natural. It's the natural process. But in regards to the ephemeral, I mean, you destroying your works of art, that's not a good process.
No,
for like
I don't think it would be cathartic.
It's kind of like self-mutilation, kind of.
Yeah, I think it for me, I think it would be much easier just to have that balance and put it out there. And if it speaks to someone else, it does. Like, you know, as someone who loves music, you know, my goal, like I wrote a bit of music and stuff, was just really to add to that ocean of music that helped, you know, get me through hard times and other people. And even if it's like it affects one person and maybe gets them that feeling like, hey, someone else gets me, that's enough. And I think that's where we should be. Like everyone's trying to reach out to like everyone. And it's like, maybe we just need to reach out to the people who need to hear at that moment and not look for it in terms of like, I want to get sponsorship deals. I want to do this and that. Like being your own voice and owning that voice. And I'm not talking about establish your brand and stuff. Like all these marketers are trying to make everyone a freaking brand, everyone a corporation so they can all cheat on their taxes. Like that's the point. You get incorporated as a person, you pay less taxes. Easy as that. But that's just the shitty thing. Like then everything becomes commoditized. Your friendships become commoditized. Everything that you do in life is this kind of transactional dealing. And we need to kind of roll that shit back and go, wait a minute.
The human experience.
Yeah. And I really hope computers can mirror back to us the things that we hate about ourselves. And maybe that's what social media is doing right now.
The feedback loop?
I think so. Like when you're looking at it in the way of like, aren't we a bunch of gossipy, like, you know, spiteful bastards? And like, I don't like this in myself. And we waste a lot and we do this. And I see a lot of people saying enough, like this great resignation, You've got like strikes happening throughout the States. So many people are standing up and saying, I don't want to do this anymore. I want my life to have some value.
Yeah.
I want to have some purpose. And people are asking, like, philosophy is making a huge comeback. So is gardening. And people are all trying to like figure out what the fuck's going on. And they need to, because we don't have a mainstream anymore. We used to have one stream of like, whether it was for you growing up in Quebec, you probably had, you know, Radio Canada, and I grew up in the prairies. I had CBC and like CFRN, and like we had like these local broadcasters, and the newspapers were local, and we knew what was happening locally, and it wasn't that bad. You had world paper. It was like, you know, 10 pages and stuff.
Yeah.
Now we know everything everywhere, and we all have opinions about it.
Overly stimulated.
Yeah, we're just too stimulated, and we can't do fuck all about it. Like,
I think it was Pamela Paul that said that boredom versus overstimulation.
Yeah, I'll take boredom, please.
And and there was an article that I saw go by a few years ago, and like procrastination is very essential. Your brain needs to turn off. You can't be overly stimulated all the time. And for the past few years, it's been marketing, advertising everywhere. But now it's come to that extent where
they're even marketing that in wellness.
Oh, right.
Well, yeah, like when you look at all this wellness activities and all this, like yoga being $100 a month or 120, like they're selling us quiet back to us. They're trading us to have a quiet mind, and they're making money doing it. It's just sad. Like, be bored. Like, I would recommend to anyone, sit down, be bored, because guess what? In an hour, you're going to think of something to do, and it's going to probably be awesome. But you haven't let yourself sit there long enough to come up with a new idea. You're just going, oh, I wonder what's going to happen in this Disney franchise thing next time. And people are just thinking in commercials. They're thinking commercials. Like they've managed to do Inception in all of us. That's why I loved that movie and I hate that movie. One of the reasons I hate it is because they made it seem so complex to like put a thought into people's mind. Yeah. It's like marketing companies do that every fucking day. Like your whole life has been marketed to, like even the way I'm thinking, there's a marketing persona for me. There's a marketing persona for you. Like they know. And that's all it's doing now. It's no longer like the punk, the jock, the cheerleader. They now have like personas of like 50, 60 different groups. And that's just the marketing personas. We have user personas. Like everyone has this. We all fit into like stereotypes, whether we want to believe it or not.
The avatar? Like I'm like us right now on the screen. Are we avatars of ourselves?
In kind of a way, we are, like, we fit into a general trend of like middle-aged Gen Xers who are like, you know, doing podcasts and trying to kind of show that we have a voice too, because we had fucking baby boomer music all throughout our 20s and 30s, and then it went straight to millennial music. Like we never had our time except for like maybe Nirvana and a few things. Like Gen X was kind of like...
Well, it's crazy because I always had that thought where I was thinking, oh my God, I'm never going to do anything. There's not going to be a world war in which I'm going to have to free Holland or go to the, you know, D-Day. I'm not going to do that. And, and the boomers.
That sucked, eh? That you missed out on seeing friends killed and explosions and like humanity just destroyed. No, I'm really sad that you didn't make it. To that, that seems like
I mean, it is an Americanized point of view, and I'm very selfish in that sense, that I'm trying to find my own path, and there's so many issues throughout the planet that I could go delve into and try to help others. So I'm very Americanized in that sense, but I mean, I still had that identity crisis where I was trying to find my purpose, and now there's this that's going on with like the new age, the revolution of communications, and I think that's part of Gen X's responsibility in addressing.
And I think, you know, we're a generation that's not talked about much. And I don't really like the generations because it once again gets into this idea of gross generalizations because, you know, depending on where people are from the world and stuff. But when you just look at, say, trends, say we look at these kinds of trends, we haven't represented very good. Like the Gen X that are out there.
It took a while for us to find a path.
And the ones that kind of manage, I don't really think they kind of spoke for all of us.
It's like Music Plus or
well, Music Plus and Much Music, you know, I
like
think
Véronique Cloutier today has her own magazine, and she's the
you know what though, you're talking about Quebec, and I gotta say hats off, because like the Québécois star system and like kind of that is still pretty down to earth. We're not talking about like
compared to the Americans.
Yeah, and Western or the rest of Canada with that, because like we are part and parcel lumped into this kind of.
But it was like the hub of like different cultures and language in Montreal and Quebec.
I think that's just it. Montreal and Toronto, you know, Vancouver. I think Canada has done multiculturalism incredibly well. We don't pat ourselves on the back for it enough. I've lived in 4 different provinces. You know, I've seen a range, like, but I would say Montreal, out of any place I've ever lived or visited, is probably the most culturally diverse place that I've ever been. And it's also like incredibly life affirming when you're on a metro with a bunch of people with different melanin count in their skin, speaking different languages, and everyone's getting along fine.
Yeah, they still go on Sundays at Tam Tams.
Exactly. And I'm pretty sure if we had like one of those breakdowns of the metro that you talk about in Montreal, the kindness would be no different. We don't need monoculture to have kindness. Kindness are in people, and I think cities like Montreal prove that. And when I first moved to Montreal, I walked around proud thinking I'm part of something much bigger than me. I'm part of a human experiment that can show that people from different cultures can live together peacefully. The island of Montreal has roughly the same population as Chicago. But when you look at the murder rates of the two, I'm just saying, like, one's about 30 a year, the other one's about 400 a year. It's insane, and we could probably get the actual numbers up, but that's a stark contrast. And I think it really comes down to, you know, just that. Like, if you stoke the racial fires and you stoke division amongst people, they will divide, and they will fight each other. That's why the term divide and conquer is so misused, and it drives me nuts, because when you divide and conquer people, you literally divide them, and then you conquer. It doesn't mean you and I go into the grocery store, let's divide and conquer, like you do your thing, I do my thing. The thing is, once you separate the people, it's just like you get them to fight each other, while then you walk off with the bank.
Yeah.
It's like the shell game, right?
It's just the social fabric of the States is so different than here in Canada or
I agree. I think it's hard to define. Like, the U.S. on one side has been this kind of,
like, at the source, it's these the
incredible
first
ideas,
people that arrived in this in the Americas. They were the we're going into a different thing that I
no, it's cool.
About,
we can swing it back.
Yeah, shit. How are we gonna bring this back?
We can. We'll figure out a way. Let's do it.
No, but there is a difference between the States and Canada, and the core values of each country. And today, I think that this enabled the States to become the powerhouse that they are. But the core values, there's so many difficulties in that sense. Where after the Second World War, the United States of America had a chance to become the champions of the planet and promote these great values, but instead
they became the arms dealer.
Yeah, and they sent napalm on Vietnam, and they started sending CIA agents in all these countries and creating strife and profiting off of it. So
it's actually, you know, I had one buddy a long time ago. His dad was actually he was a teenager or a young adult in Hungary during World War II. So, of course, he was, you know, on the other side. And that's a difficult conversation to have, right? You're taught to, like, but one of the things his dad said, because, like, they moved to Canada and stuff like that, and he said that, I don't know why so many people are upset about the Nazis. Basically, you're living in what we wanted the world to be. And I was just like, okay, so are we casual Friday fascism in the first place? Like, you know, because we are talking about, like, a lot of things that they are, you know, forget, like, the Jewish situation, because Like, I'm not saying that didn't happen and that was horrible, but besides all of that, like if you look at before World War II started, a lot of monarchs and a lot of like people in power actually really admired what Mussolini and Hitler were doing. Like the titans of power in the United States were kind of like, oh yeah, no, this guy. The Americans were selling arms to them for years, even after Britain started. Like, this is all known. So there was sympathy towards that. And then you have Operation Paperclip.
Yeah, I'll bring all these scientific minds from the Nazis. And
then you start looking at, like, you know, the influence of that going into, like, computing technology and, like, the government contracts that allowed, like, for IBM, which, you know, IBM was the database system that was used in Auschwitz. Like, this is stuff that you can find. This is not like conspiracy theory. This actually existed. It's you have to look at these things and go, okay, well, what have we carried over? Because some of those things, like, they saw it as great technological leaps, but this was coming from a regime that we can all agree. Well, maybe not all of us, but I can say a vast majority of humanity agrees was not the way to go. And why are we taking these technologies? Why is VW, you know, Hugo Boss, you know, IBM, all these companies, Coca-Cola, all these companies that actually, you know, made a lot of money with the Nazis and like were part and parcel of all of this, why are they still some of our biggest brands? And they haven't even had to rebrand. Like, Facebook had to change its name to Meta.
Yeah.
IBM, still IBM, you know.
It seems to me that we're being pushed in the direction that we need to know everything and we need to contribute our democratic vote to everything. Like, is it possible to just be a human being that sits on his sofa and reads a book and just goes back to what we were saying, like just drawing? Because it seems that nowadays with all this technology, this window into all this supreme communications, that we need to absolutely contribute our opinion. And if we don't, then others with the power to do so will just take over and benefit from it. At the end of the day, can I just have a book and read a book and draw? Can I just, you know, it seems that we're forced into social media. We're forced into being active socially. And
I think what you're saying is really interesting, because I do agree on so many of those points that it's a waste of time. However, none of those decisions we're making on social media are leading to policy. Like, nobody asked me my thoughts on, like, say, the pipeline or about any bill that we put in. Like, my municipal politics doesn't allow me to say, I want to put our money on this. Like,
but they're radicalizing points of view, though.
Oh, they are radicalized points of view, but how do you do it in a way that empowers people? Like, say, for example, something that isn't as radical. Like, it could be just the idea of, like, what do we want to put our funds on in terms of priority? So do we need infrastructure for this highway, or do we want to put in the school system? And then take those ratios and look at how you sort your budget. Like, say, for example, I personally wish I could cut a certain amount of my taxes that are going towards certain conflict zones. I'm a pacifist. I personally and devoutly don't believe in military engagement. So, as a conscientious objector, it kind of bothers me that a certain amount of my taxes goes towards making people homeless in other countries. Like, and then acting pissy when they come to our country and knock on our doors. Oh, you promised us freedom. You bombed my home. So I don't want my taxes going towards that, but I would love for it to go towards other things, like, say, housing for people who don't have housing, making sure that everyone in Canada's needs are met, because, you know, we should be looking at how we treat our weakest citizen, not how we treat our wealthiest, you know, billionaire class. So I think, you know, Alfred E. Smith, he was the former governor of New York, actually said it best when he said, the cure for the crisis of democracy is more democracy. And I think, you know, you're right. I don't want to decide whether that dress is yellow or purple or whatever the hell that one was, or some of the polls coming up to try and figure out, because those polls are made to figure out your persona better. Like they're put out there so they can understand a demographical feed. Like they're made fun, but those answers resonate with a personality. So they're building data. That's what they're doing. Then they're putting you in a stream that the things that you're interested in come to you always. So everything you like all the time, and
confirmation bias. When you give thumbs up and likes, it's not a necessary, it's a fake democratic vote.
Yeah,
you're just
exactly.
voting for your own prison. You're voting what will suit best to continue.
Yeah, exactly. So why aren't we looking back at the idea of government service again, or different things like that, where we're participating in our government? Because we've now said that our government is our leaders. Fuck that. They're not our leaders. They're our representatives.
Yeah, it's very chimpanzee. It's the alpha dude on the shield with the sword in his hand with lightning shooting into the sword.
Yeah, and it's coming from one office.
Yes, you are my master.
Yeah, they vote for their leadership, and then that leadership office then decides what the curriculum is. It's no longer a party of the people. It's a cult of personality. And these guys usually come in through like some kind of,
they know the language, the vernacular.
Professional management class, or they're lawyers and stuff like that. They've worked in these businesses that they help up.
That's what Jean Charest did in Quebec. He was like at that point where he knew the language, he knew the context, and
And when he was deputy prime minister for the chief of that, who was Brian Mulroney, and that guy's still a kingmaker. And that guy he sold us into neoliberalism, lock, stock, and two smoking barrels. Like he just pushed us right in. And
the stakes are too high today.
Yeah, they wanted to privatize everything. And when you privatize, like say your municipal roads, instead of paying one or two guys and having a truck and the municipality doing it, you now have to pay some guy plus his manager, plus his manager's manager, plus that guy, so that they can have a profit margin at a certain thing. Like after everything went privatized, who owned the skyscrapers? That's all you have to do to look at each city who benefited from privatization. If it's in Edmonton, it's Stantec. They used to be a small little like construction thing. Now they're massive. You privatize all of this and you allow for people to let in their buddies.
It's like, well, I mean, maybe I'm getting off track here, but the movie about the story of McDonald's with, what's his name, Batman there. Michael Keaton. That's the whole premise. I mean, initially he was building his restaurant. He wanted to build a food chain, which he thought would bring in the big bucks, but inevitably the lawyer told him, the money is not in building a food chain.
Nope.
It's owning the land. It's owning the building.
Well, and that's how a lot of these companies, are working. I was watching an interview with Yanis Varoufakis the other day, and he was explaining really quite eloquently. It's on his channel on YouTube. You can find it. But he was explaining how a lot of companies kind of made bank off the 2008 crisis. So what you do is like you have a company, right? And that company ends up owning the building, so all the assets. Now, you create another part of the company, which is now a different company, and that's the services. So now this company here is renting services from there. Like, so it's putting money into this, but then you're using the services from the both. Like he explains it so much. Yeah, it's basically a hack. Like you're
everybody's hacking the system.
Yeah. And it's just marketing and PR that covers up the hacking. Everyone's doing this life hack, and that's one of the things that he brings up. And he makes a really good point that the capitalism is gone. Like capitalism, we don't know what this is, and I think that's what I've been really thinking about lately is. And I think what a lot of people are feeling, and I think we just don't know how to articulate, but we don't know what system we're in. We got used to the rules of the game of neoliberal capitalism. We knew where we needed to like kind of listen to be able to know where the cheddar's going to be, right? Like
listen to our overlords.
Yeah, exactly.
Give them the money and hope that they will give us the benefit of.
And there was a mainstream. Like we had a mainstream in Canada.
hope?
This goes back to like what we were talking about when we were kids. There was like CBC, stuff like this. So this all wraps back around nicely, but that's the point. That was the mainstream. So that was where you could have your water cooler talk.
Yeah.
It was like Lost season finale. Like there was big things that everyone could talk about, and we had something that joined us.
To hope for, like the American dream.
Exactly. And we don't have that right now.
No.
Like before media, we had religion that did that. That kind of brought us together one day a week with a group of people that we might not see all the time and shake their hand and become communal with them. And that was the whole point of these religious exercises. Religion kind of got torn apart because it was a power structure that became like dysfunctional in Canada and stuff like that. And that's why we don't have it, and we're secular in this country. But we never replaced it with anything. And these social media companies have come in and they're offering us a sense of belonging because we all need that. That's a psychological need, is belonging. And we also need our self-esteem. You've got Instagram on one side making you feel shitty about your body because you don't have a 10-pack or you don't have like, you know, this giant muscular structure of Batman. And, you know, your girlfriend doesn't look like something that was drawn by, you know, a misogynist in the 90s, you know? Like, it's just...
It was terrible in the 80s.
Yeah, but people look like this now.
Oh, my God. Yeah.
And they're starting to, like Kardashian, like, she doesn't look like a human.
Yeah, I saw a report about that. A girl that she said outright, she said, for years I needed to have that body that I saw on TikTok and Instagram, and I paid money, like, I don't know, over thousands of dollars just to get that body, and she got sick about it, psychologically and physically.
And you know what's so sad about it is these things were happening before the internet too. This is how marketing works.
The 80s was insane with the implants.
But it even goes before that. Like, marketing exists because you have to first create a need.
Goddamn Edward Bernays.
Yeah, exactly. Edward Bernays, like, go right back to the source. And
cigarettes.
Yeah, cigarettes.
My grandmother died because of Edward Bernays.
Yeah.
He made the suffragettes smoke cigarettes in front of the press, and it took away cigarettes from the phallic symbols of men and gave it to women, and women started smoking just to make more money for the Rothmans and whatnot.
You know, there's a great documentary series called The Century of Self by Adam Curtis. And he just, you know, eloquently ties all these broadcasts from like the past to like around 2008 when it was done. And it's just, you see how it was this whole age of persuasion, and it gets into Bernays, and it gets into the whole way that the 60s, even the youth cultures were like, this was all part and parcel of marketing. That's why the end of Mad Men has them all like, you know, blissed out kind of hippie-like and doing the whole like Coke song. What was the Coke song? Like, not We Are the World, but like some kind of, you know, thing like that. And it's just...
Everybody's shaking hands, holding hands in the field
and just
of
getting
green.
into the whole like free spirit, free love thing. And it was like, it's so cynical because it's just selling us stuff that we don't need. And the fact is, like, right now we need to start looking around going, do I have everything I need? Yeah, I think I'm good. The world could use a break from me. Like, buying. And I know that's not popular. Like, everyone's saying, oh, you need to buy to keep the economy going. But if we're creating a system that we would be better off to not work and save our planet, I think, you know, the lay down movement or whatever it's called in China and these other groups are responding to that because we need to just sit still for a bit.
It's a long-term thinking, not just short-term and invest in consuming.
Yeah. How about you? Like, I don't know about you, but there's days where I would rather be out planting trees or like trying to, you know, help the environment rather than going, okay, I'm going to work on a project that is meant to be sticky or it's meant to like distract people or things like that. You know, that's one of the reasons why, like, I prefer to work like with companies that are actually doing B2B because at least we're helping people do their job, you know? And I think more people need to start thinking that way. Like, what is the end goal of your company? Like, really think about it. Like, sit down for a minute and go, what are we trying to do here? Are we trying to solve something, or are we just trying to build more consumers? Because in David Graeber's book, Bullshit Jobs, there's this wonderful this one letter this guy writes in, and it's so funny. He's talking about being a 3D animator and how his dream was like, yeah, he wanted to be in those movies, right? Like everything you've probably felt, I felt like as an artist, like drawn stuff. Like I was a comic nerd, so like I understand this. But you know, this idea of working to get rid of the split ends in hair, which supposedly this shampoo does. So that was his whole job, was fixing hairs in post for shampoo ads. And it's literally like, if your job disappeared tomorrow, would it be a benefit to the world? And that's the thing. It's not just like, would anyone notice it's gone? Would things be systematically better if your job didn't exist? And that's the thing that gets scary.
But it's a diverse slavery system. It's a new age slavery.
We're dealing with finite
finite resources.
Yeah, but also like fiat currency that actually has no intrinsic value except whatever our psychology puts on it. Like our paper money is not backed by gold anymore.
Exactly.
It's backed by a guarantee from the government, which isn't that just debt then? Like, isn't that kind of what we're looking at? That's another David Graeber book, 5,000 Years of Debt, or Debt, the First 5,000 Years. Excellent read. Just plug in his stuff. Excellent thinker. And he came out of the Occupy movement. So he was the one who named it Occupy, I believe. Yeah, so I would heavily recommend his readings. I think he takes a more of a socio-anarchist kind of view on things. So it might not be your political bend, but that's okay. Like, give it a read, because some of the things he brings up, it doesn't matter what side of the like color scheme you are or whatever. He's bringing up points that are just not hard to dispute, because they're like just about being human. What his proposals are, it kind of gets into the whole thing where we talk back to like Tristan Harris and who were the Jared Lanier and
Pamela Paul, who wrote the book 100 Things That the Internet Took From Us, allegedly. We don't know the title exactly. We'll go have a look there.
And there's a lot of others, like Nicholas Carr, who wrote The Shallows, and there's a bunch of other people that I would actually say are bringing up some really good points. I just don't feel the fact that they're not unanimous is somewhat disappointing in their way of trying to deal with something. Because I find this is like so many other things that tend to be on the activist side. You have many different options of transforming your own life to be able to like work within this. Like, so whether it's surveillance capitalism or anything else that we're looking at, no one's really giving a clear solution. And that's just it. Like, you know, Tristan Harris, you know, he's talking about bringing ethics, which I strongly agree with as someone who works in tech. My job depends on like, you know, people being into tech, but I think there's a better way we can do it. And I tend to side with him, but that is a bias based on, you know, who I am and what skin I have in the game.
Yeah, but difference of opinion doesn't mean that people can't come together and exchange and learn from each other. And I think that's what the problem with the current Facebook format is. And Jaron Lanier, that's what he mentions. I'm going to paraphrase, but he mentions something in the effect that rewarding the individual is what is important, instead of rewarding some kind of mob mentality that's going to cause exactly what's going on right now, where people are just confirmation bias and believing in fake news and fighting amongst each others and going up on the street and then just protesting for something that's totally not factual or scientifically factual.
And I agree, and but it's not the first time this has happened. Like we've dealt with conspiracy theories many times before that had an aim.
Or propaganda, like the Nazis
propaganda
that imposed a certain belief system, and people went on the street and just started killing Jewish people.
You look at how propaganda was used throughout, like even Yugoslavia, after Tito passed away, like just the political unrest that formed there, where you had, people who were getting along for, so many years, relatively, like there was, it just erupted. But that was because people used divisionary politics, wedge politics, to try and separate the electorate and distract them while they fucking raid the bank accounts. And that's what worries me. Whenever you see a politician starting to say us and them, they want you to not look at what else they're going to do.
Do as I say, not as I do.
Yeah, they want you to
even
squabble.
worse.
They
Yeah.
want you to squabble while they pillage. And like if you have someone who is a lawyer or this or that for what company, you just need to figure out whose board of directors are they going to sit on when they're done their office. Like you look at Brian Mulroney and how many board of directors positions that guy has, you know exactly how it was. You look at a lot of these former prime ministers, and it's in retrospect, years later after these omnibus bills, that all of a sudden, surprise, a deregulation popped up that you didn't even know was there because it was like a 800-page omnibus bill that they had a week to look through and pass. Like, and the media is a culprit because they're concentrating on these juicy gossip stories like Stormy Daniels. We know all these things in the Trump era, but I honestly couldn't tell you any policies that were passed that had any kind of effect because, these things were just, they weren't newsworthy. Because it's better to show the political theater. And that's what the States has erupted into now. It's political theater. I don't even buy it anymore. I don't buy that there's this fight between Republicans and Democrats because
It's the same monster. It's the same monster.
We saw it done with celebrities in the 90s, right? That's how they tried it out. They did it with Jessica Simpson and Britney Spears, and they would do these little kind of things. And they were literally made up. Their marketing teams would kind of set this because that would get them all in the news. In the National Enquirer. Like I'm just saying, like you get into this and then celebrity culture erupted into reality television that then became this kind of idea that like people like you and me can get on screen and we can be like a character too. And now it's YouTube and now it's like TikTok and this and that. And we're getting into this weird culture where we have so many differing opinions that we've divided and conquered and divided and conquered and divided and conquered to the point where we're so weak and fragile that it won't take much more than one charismatic leader that's just going to be a touch better than Trump that everyone's just like, okay, great leader, sure. Or we go into a techno weird world where it's all AI and it's telling us how to be and like, make sure you pick up your Twinkies today. And like, I don't think it will talk like that. I want it to though.
No, it has to have a British accent.
It has to. No,
Don't forget your Twinkie.
It'd be like just Bede.
Russell Brand dictating everything.
Don't forget your Twinkie.
What is it with the T's in British language? Why are they so afraid of using the T word?
I don't know.
What happened?
I think
What happened?
I think we in Canada can say T.
Yeah.
Because we have better dental. No, I don't know. Maybe
that what
it's
it is?
I don't know.
Maybe
Like
that's
there's
what it
always
is.
that joke that British people had awful teeth. So I'm wondering if that's
Maybe
where
that's
it came
what
from.
it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
How the hell can we end this podcast? Because, man, honestly, we've been talking almost for sure 2 hours and a half.
Oh, shit.
And
Okay.
we're probably going to talk for another 40 minutes. So maybe we could wrap it up.
Yeah.
We're going to have to do another podcast, I think. Because
Okay.
we didn't even dive into any of this. I mean,
Oh,
I
shit.
did
Sorry,
research
man.
and a lot of stuff that we talked about. It really helped that I did this research, but we didn't even, I had so many questions
Well,
for you.
let's try and get through some of them because you could always cut it down, or we could do a
Yeah.
two-parter.
Oh, but it's too late. We want to hang out too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll do another podcast because
Yeah.
this is just the first discussion, and
Sure.
and we'll go back to all this stuff. I'll keep doing research, but how do we want to end this podcast? You want to give us some links, some stuff that you want people to go have a look at? And
Well, I think what people should really take away from this is just the idea of, we all do have a certain amount of control.
that's the responsibility that people need to take, and I don't think people are ready for this. They're
but
not ready.
I think
to do
it's
research.
just a matter of not doing research. I think it's going back another way. I would actually tell people, no, you don't need to research more. You don't need to do this. Don't go down another rabbit hole. Get out and go for a walk and like reconnect with nature, reconnect that balance. Because one of the things that has been kind of discussed more and more lately in certain, like, I think I've started seeing it more in the psychology magazines and stuff. They're talking about these like hemisphere thinking, like where we have
left and right brain.
Well, no, but they're taking it to the next step, because it kind of was a theory that then disappeared, and then now they're starting to say, oh, okay, wait a minute, we have like a lopsided brain, right? And so like our prefrontal lobe on our left side on our right side is more pronounced, and we tend to have another part of our brain that's different on our right. Anyways, it gets into this whole idea of where it stores memories and stuff like that. Suffice to say, our modern like education system favors actually the left brain. And, we don't do as much in the humanities and the arts anymore. Like a lot of schools are getting their funding cut. Arts is kind of losing its grip. And this is kind of where I'm getting back to, like, we need to start reintroducing the idea of arts, crafts, being out in nature, gardening, things like that, to reconnect actually with our right side of our brain to help develop it. It's kind of like if you're a bodybuilder, you don't want to just do one arm, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of really building up that idea. And I think by doing that, people will then have the imagination to look at ways to seriously fix the issues that we're in, and maybe start bringing that kind of thinking into whatever we're going to call AI. Because if we want to look at AI, I think we need to start from scratch, because a cynical marketing machine that is based on a super brain to make you buy the right sweater or, microphone or podcast equipment is going to you. I don't think that's going to cut it for the future that we need. And I think we need to turn this around. And I think people can turn that around by taking a break from their cell phones. You don't have to throw it in the thing, but give them less likes and clicks. Like, spend less time on it, spend more time outside, reconnect, rebalance. And then let's have this discussion and debate, because I think we need to first do steps 1 and 2 to be able to get to step 3. And that's the grind. And maybe that means planting some trees and doing some gardening and like just getting outside and having some fun. And you know what? Maybe that's what the pandemic has taught us, and that's kind of cool.
Before we end the podcast, I just wanted to give a few links and information on books and podcasts and documentary films that you can go have a look, people that are listening. An interesting book and documentary that is on Netflix. It's Capital in the 21st Century. If you want to go have a look, I don't know if you've seen that.
I've seen that one. That one's fantastic. Actually, the interesting thing about Thomas Piketty, I've read the book that's based on. It's so interesting, like just how, even in the documentary, brings up how like fashion was really the root of a lot of these. It was kind of like the seed to a lot of the consumerism that we got into. I would really recommend watching that, along with the one that I brought up as well, Adam Curtis's documentary, The Century of Self. It's on YouTube. It's very easy to find. I would highly recommend that in conjunction with Capital in the 21st Century. And I think it actually pieces together really well what actually Mountains of History books would do the same. Like, I think it's a perfect summary of how consumer capitalism was built up.
And also The Great Hack, which is a Netflix special documentary about the Cambridge Analytica issue. Do you want to tell a bit of the story about like Cambridge Analytica had their hand on the voting for Trump for the 2016 election?
Brexit too.
Brexit, exactly. Yeah.
I would highly recommend as well, in conjunction with that, going to the Guardian UK. They were the ones who broke the Cambridge Analytica like leaks and like the initial discussions. They have some excellent long form journalism regarding it, and I would highly recommend that in conjunction with that documentary to get really kind of the full view of it.
Also, a name that we haven't mentioned actually in the podcast, Shoshana Zuboff, who wrote The Age of Surveillance Capitalism.
Fantastic book.
Yeah, it is. I'm going to look into it. I haven't had a chance.
It's a hard read in terms of like the reality of it. It's books always have like a paradigm shift. This one for me actually was kind of like a waking up point because, you know, it gave me the ability to recognize like maybe warning signs of where, you know, the company I'm working, not the company I'm working for right now, but like say a company I'm working for is trying to do some of those kinds of things and trying to nip it in the bud early and go, yeah, you know, just because we can do that doesn't mean we should.
Also, this in particular, in this instance, is not a book, but Tristan Harris, which we've mentioned in the podcast, which is, he has a podcast as well if you want to have a look, if you want to learn more about the surveillance capitalism. It's called The Undivided Attention. Also, Jaron Lanier, who we mentioned in the podcast, has a book. It's called 10 Reasons.
Yeah.
Have you had a chance to?
I haven't yet. It's something I'm looking forward to. That guy is... The more I read into him, the more I'm like, wow, this is someone who is like the original. Like he was one of the original people, and now he's kind of like, you know. Like
I was having coffee
like
this morning and listening to his stuff, and he's intense and he's very interesting.
Yeah, but it reminds me of Dr. Frankenstein, like the actual doctor. Like he's created like the monster, and it's like, fuck, what do I do? You know?
Yeah.
I would hate. Like, I keep on thinking, like, would that happen? Well, it has happened to me. Like, I've moved into neighborhoods that have gentrified because, like, people, like, I've come in, and I came in with the idea, oh, this is going to be great.
Away from everything?
Well, no, it's going to help revitalize the neighborhood. This kind of brings more of a mix of, like, financial groups, and it helps erode class struggle. And I thought, like, oh, we can, really idealistic. And then next thing you know, like that neighborhood is so expensive that not even you can afford it anymore. And like you see like your neighbors who you used to like, you know, tip the hat to and stuff. They're living in the park now. And I'm not even shitting you. That happened. Like these people were living in the park. And I was like, wow. So, you know, there's so many things we think we're doing that are for, you know, the good and the greater good. And these companies are run by so many people who are like that. Their motivations are great. It's just some of the things that we think that we can deal with, we can't control what happens when that gets into bad actors' hands. So surveillance capitalism scares me because I don't want to be sold shit to. That's one thing. But the biggest thing that scares me is whoever gets control of that machine will eventually be able to control every last one of us.
Scary thought.
Yeah.
We talked a little bit about Quebec, what's going on with Quebec and Canada. There is a thinker, a philosopher, a professor at Université Laval who's actually presides the Commission of Ethics in Science and Tech, AI research. His name is Jocelyn McClure.
Okay.
So he's an interesting person to have a look at if you want to see some of his videos are on YouTube.
Wow. Yeah, I would love to see.
Yeah, it's interesting, his point of view. And recently, actually a few years ago, I think it was the Declaration Montreal for the responsible AI. So if people want to have a look at that, that's www Declaration Montreal.
Actually, I know some of those guys who are in that, and I would, huge shout out to them. No, there is a really good community in Montreal. I've got colleagues and stuff like that who work in AI that I want to like say these things so those guys can get the funding to do some of the work that they want to do, because these are people who actually have great ideas and would love to like actually like build a better community and build better world. So there are a lot of good tech guys out there. I think there's a lot of startup owners that are great people, and I think a lot of people in that world are well-meaning. but we're just sometimes playing with stuff. It's like playing with a loaded gun. You know, it's like that scene in Rust that just happened, or like you heard about, like poor Alec Baldwin, he accidentally shot that. Yeah, and when you look at something like that, that's just it. Like they were just trying to create art. Like nobody was trying to do a malicious thing. And sometimes in business, we end up doing that. So it's like, how do we figure out another way? And I think we'll get into that.
The last point was, I mean, I was doing some research to try to figure out what the whole history of the internet was, and there was a university document that you can go have a look at by Roxana Radu that's Negotiating Internet Governance. You can look that up on Google, and you might find the information to further your knowledge about that topic.
I think that's important.
Radu, yeah.
And look at some of the policies, the security policies that are coming in Germany. Or like not just Germany, but the EU altogether. Like, you know, there's some really good stuff happening in Europe where they're starting to look at regulation, where I think this is going to like benefit us. And I do think there is change coming. I think we are going to hit a next wave. It's just, like I said, it's going to be up to us people to decide which internet we want, which systems we want. We can choose our future.
Take the power back.
Take it back, yeah. Do we want Star Trek or Wall-E? I say
Star Trek.
Yes.
Yeah.
Go Picard. Yeah.
I haven't seen
Live
Picard
long and
series.
prosper. I don't know.
Well, I think that's a good way of putting things in perspective, and I really thank you for being here, Matt. Really appreciate your points of view, and I think we will have to redo another podcast, if not two more, because honestly, I haven't even been through all these notes that I had, these questions. I have more for next time.
Yeah, I tend to be pretty off the cuff. Like
it's all good, man. It was a great conversation. I really appreciate you being here, honestly.
Yeah, no worries. I've kind of set up these things. I do this actually for a lot of my research. When I'm interviewing people, I normally have like a list of questions, but I let it go conversational. As long as I hit those beats and we're able to talk about those things, my goal is I want people to be relaxed, just like you've made me relax here, and we talk and like the real shit comes out. And that's what people need to start having, those conversations. So thank you. Like these podcasts actually help people, because if anything, sometimes it gives someone the ability to articulate what they're feeling deep down inside, and they just didn't know how to say it. And so hearing other people out there like you and me, and maybe that's just it. Maybe we're the common schlub and we're like putting our voices out in the airwaves, but that's good. And it's another point of view that needs to be seen in this view, or like this whole area. And maybe we just need to start listening to other viewpoints. Yeah. And maybe that's just it. We just need to share a bit and maybe find some common ground in doing that.
True. Inspiration, integrity, transparency. Cheers, man.
Cheers.
See you next time. Thank you, people.
Thank you.
What was that anyways?
Bull's Head from Richmond.
Richmond.
Yeah, this is from our little town. This is
nice. Have a look at the website. Bull's Head, Richmond.
Yeah, if you just go Bull's Head Ginger Ale, it's probably the first one that comes up. But yeah, they've been around for a while. I think it's newer owners. I looked on their website. It seems cool. But they also have different flavors. And they're in the old school, like stubby bottles.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so I was so surprised when I saw them. I'm like, this is like a hipster's dream. Like, why isn't this being sold in like every mile end, like Bobo Dep or something? You know, like it's awesome. Yeah.
Thanks, Bullhead. Bull's Head?
Bull's Head, yeah.
Thanks, Bull's Head. If you want to sponsor the show, we're here.
Cheers.
Cheers, man. Thanks.
Yeah.